because I am on Conn right now, and we are live. We're going to be talking about the importance of panels. We've had a whole day where we've been doing nothing but panels. I am joined so far by Meredith, and some other people might pop up and come hang out with us, and we're going to be talking about the importance of panels. Obviously, we spent over 9 hours today playing the panels that we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. And I'm going to let Meredith introduce herself and why panels are important to her, and then I'll tell you why they're important to me and tell you how I've interacted with panels over my many years.
Hi, guys. I'm Meredith Lochran. I am with GeekInsider.com, also Lady Geek. And the importance of panels is to have a group of people who are your peers or your mentors, people that you look up to, who are out there imparting their knowledge. And for those who attend, to be open to the possibilities and finding new things and new ways to do things, new ideas, things that are tried and true from other people who have gone through these experiences. So whatever genre you're in, whatever interest you are, these panels are so important because they are living it. They are experiencing it and they're imparting their knowledge onto you. And so I highly recommend, if you can jump on a panel because you have knowledge to share, or if you want to be proud in the crowd, and support those panelists because they are doing their best to make a life out of this as well. But they're doing it by paying it forward. So for me, the panels, on top of it, you're not going solo. So when you're sitting with a group of your peers and you're bouncing off ideas, I mean, some of the most amazing things can come from that. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Rob, where'd you go? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm still here. I'm just on a different. I have to mute because Jax is home and in the background, jumping up and down. So for me, and we're going to be joined by Joy Reynolds when I'm done explaining why panels are important to me. Panels, I've probably either been on or done or ran over 100 panels. I have been everything you can be. I've been a person who has hosted it, has helped the host do it. It's been about me. It's been about things I wanted to talk about. I've gone to listen to other people, seen celebrities. I've handed out flyers in the middle of it, helped move things around. I have had every aspect of that happen to me, and I think they're so important because I call them my continued education, and I've had a lot of people say that the words I've said on them are very important. So that's why we do so many of these panels. That's why we're going to continue to do all these panels, and it's a continuing education, and it's a way to be entertained. I've even snuck into a panel to take a nap, so I've done it all when it comes to panels. And Joy Reynolds, what do panels mean to you?
Panels mean to me it's not a good place to sleep, considering my apnea. Yeah. Panels are an opportunity for fandom to come together and to more or less be convinced, if you will, that they're all not individually thinking it in a different way. Allow me to, I'm sure we all remember our first con. And to our first con, we were probably maybe in our teens, probably our early 20s, just depending on how things were in our lives. And by going there, we saw people who spoke our language, as it were, like minds. And the fact that we didn't want to leave. I remember my first convention was 1987. And so it was a media convention focusing on Doctor Who and British sci-fi. And I think I stayed awake the entire weekend at that convention. I didn't go to sleep because I wanted to absorb every single second that I was. And being involved in panels, when you have a discussion on kind of vegetable talk for the, you have panels like that. Those things that are so, how can I say it, intensive, accurate, esoteric, I think, maybe. I don't know. It's Sunday. I don't eat my dictionary for breakfast then. But the fact of the matter is we have people who are with like minds that we normally don't communicate with. And this is way before the interweb was invented, or at least made out known to people. So this is all we had at the time. And so to me, what panels are a very vibrant, vital part of conventions, if only for the fact that you get to rest your feet, just hear other people talk about their thoughts and opinions on certain things.
And let me just get in here and bring up the right screen. And let me ask you all, what was the best panel you've ever been to? And we'll go with Meredith first. Meredith, what was the best panel you've ever attended?
It wasn't actually a Comic Con. It was before Wayne Dyer died, actually. It was just because of my mindset and what I needed at the time. So it was Wayne Dyer and what's her name? Something Mice. But I mean, this is a long time ago. The other ones, I think again, it speaks to motivation, and as somebody who attends them, it speaks to what you need or what you want in your life, and so you go to these panels for that. It's nectar, if you will, to kind of sustain you to what you're going through or where you're going or what you want to do and what you aspire to. So I have a really hard time speaking to the best one that I've ever been to, but that one speaks to me because it was exactly what I needed at exactly the right time.
And Joey, what do you think? What was your favorite panel to ever attend?
Two of them come to my professional level. Seeing DeForest Kelly at Volcon St. Pete, 1991. This was just a few months before Star Trek VI came out. And the fact that he wasn't, he obviously he had been around for a long time. In fact, this year is his 100th birth centenary. So the 1990 is a far different cry from being 71 today in terms of the fact that people will still keep themselves as healthy as possible. So when Dee appeared on a sale or feeble or anything, no. In fact, quite the opposite. He gave a poem in regards to his relationship with being on the series, and then he took questions from the audience. And the panel was an hour, but you felt that you would spend at least half the day with him. He made you feel that comfortable. There was a wedding going on in one of the other ballrooms that wasn't being used. And when Dee had found out that the couple were starting, surprise appearance at the reception, which was pretty nice. Another one, at least where fan panel is concerned, was the discussion about LGBTQI in science fiction. This is fairly recently at a Who event in Baltimore a few years back. And the fact that I had gotten a tremendous of information in regarding to how people want to be treated, how people want to be, and I wanted to go in there with an open mind, and I was, because one could easily make stupid, silly jokes at 11 o'clock on Saturday night, but there are people who were like me back in the day, who wanted to be accepted, who wanted to be, in this case, part of the team. I wouldn't say normal, because nothing is ever normal, but to be an essential part of the team that can make their contribution and a positive contribution. Yeah. And it's kind of lasted in my memory.
And for me, I'll say that my greatest memories are New York Comic Con with Buddy Scalera. I remember going to Creators Connection and having this idea that I could become a comic book creator through these connections. Sadly, I actually never made a connection there that lasted. but it inspired me enough to create Indie Advocates. It inspired me enough to take steps in my creative career that got me to where I am today. So it was very beneficial to me, if not directly. It definitely inspired what I would do later with my creative life, and how I would create a website that helped thousands of people. Without that panel, that website would have never been made. So it's a very powerful moment. And I've been able to not only sit in an audience in a wheelchair, but get back up, use a cane to actually speak and be part of the conversation. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm pretty excited to be part of that conversation and be part of it, because I think panels are very powerful, and I think panels can definitely be an educational tool. And I think, like Joey said and Meredith said, it kind of moves you in a way. The right kind of panel moves you. And I have people to this date who send me emails telling me about how much it inspired them, and they've given me their comic books at this point and said, "Look what I created because you told me I could." Because at the beginning and ending of every one of my panels, the how to create and promote and produce comics in whatever year, we change the title depending on the year. I always say the number one thing is, yes, you're allowed to make a comic book, and I always end by saying you should go make your comic book, because only you can tell your story. And I've inspired people, but I've also been inspired. And I think panels are important because there are moments with people that we aspire to. But I'll also ask you guys this, because I think it's very telling and important. When I go to a panel, I'm like a reporter. I've always been that way. I always want to ask one, if not dozens of questions. And I'm always told I ask really good questions. And I guess that comes from just who I am. And it carries over into these conversations we have in the interviews I do. The one thing I hate when I go to especially a panel where I'm trying to learn something from them is when they take the 25 minutes to explain who they all are and give me cute anecdotes. And meanwhile, I'm just I get their answers because I have a question. I want to hear everyone else's questions to learn. And on my panels, we have just like these when we start, we have a 2-minute intro and everyone gets to work and we answer questions. So I always allow anyone to come in here and ask a question. How important are those panels for questions and being able to find answers? Do you guys find that those are places where you get to find something you never find anywhere else?
Joey, do you want to go first?
I think Joey might be frozen at the moment.
I think he's frozen.
He might be back. We'll go with you, Meredith.
So I was at the Space Coast Comic Con, and I went into a panel with just Gil Gerard. Okay, so I'm 48. I grew up with Buck Rogers, and so I wasn't necessarily fangirling because, when it comes to celebrities and things like that, my attitude is that they're putting on their pants just like I do. So I kind of take it with a grain of salt, and I try not to put everybody on a pedestal so much so that I can ask those questions. And, his panel was a little bit different because rather than having his whole spiel at the beginning and then waiting for questions and answers, he did a whole panel with Q&A from the audience. And he wanted to see what their temperature was, and then he was going to come back with answers for them. And there was a lot of interesting insight from him. I had no idea that he was into climate change and all this stuff, and hearing his insights on that kind of made me think and go, well, maybe I need to do a little bit more research, because I have my own thoughts and stuff like that, and I didn't want to troll him either. So just so you know where I stand on that. But there were a lot of people that I heard in the audience who was like, well, if he's thinking that, then maybe I need to. So those opportunities to open up, both as a speaker, but as a listener as well, when it just opens up all of this opportunity to seek and find and do, and whether it's to do the research, whether it is to find more connections, find advocacy and things. A lot of times you just don't know what you're going to get at these panels, and they're gems, or you could, I would like to know, after you guys answer, if you've ever walked away from a panel upset because you didn't get a damn thing out of it. I think is Joey frozen again? Oh, you're on mute too.
Sorry, I keep muting because Jack is here. I was saying I think Joey is having some trouble with
No,
okay. He's back. Did you hear the question, what we're answering right now?
So the fact that, if I'm right in saying, just getting something out of the panel, a multiplayer set, an artist in particular, and the idea of leaving, I think the question was raised about if you leave the panel and you're pretty much not happy with how it went, and I've never been to any panel. In fact, I feel like I'm kind of rude when I happen to pop my head into a panel and then leave about a few minutes afterwards because other volunteer gopher stuff, but I'm just making sure that everything is okay. But I've never really met anybody who was kind of angry in regards to a panel in that manner.
I will say, for the answer to the question that Meredith asked, I've gone to a lot of panels, especially the last couple of years, and I try to be supportive. I go to LGBTQ panels. I go to as many panels as I can, basically, to get as much information as I can because I want to be informed. And if I'm at a show where I can do panels, like if I show up to New York Comic Con and I don't have a table, I take my time. Even if I have my sister at the show with me at a table, I like to go to the panels if I can. There's this... And trying to think how to do this as politely as I can, because I want it to be honest, and I don't want it to seem, I don't want someone twisting my words. So I'm being very careful here. I've gone to a lot of panels in recent times where I've heard that the whole problem with comics are middle-aged white men. The problem is I'm a middle-aged white man, but I advocate for comics. I advocate for many creators, and I advocate for people who are completely different in all aspects. There is no lines. I don't judge. I advocate for everyone. And I know many people who happen to be middle-aged white people who are doing great things in comics, who aren't being these monsters that are being portrayed in this panel. And I just feel like that closes the door. I don't leave angry per se at them for saying that. I'm angry. And I understand, I want to say this, I do understand that that comes from something that they feel is real. And I'm not trying to diminish that. I'm just trying to say that in my experience, hate never leads to anything but more hate. And if you're starting to blame people, you're not reaching an audience. You're never going to change the minds of people. If you're just trying to build an echo chamber, it's very dangerous. And I do think some of the panels have been dangerous. I've left angry just because they didn't open the door for other people to become fans of them. And they missed an opportunity and wanted to point fingers at people. And that never works well. We see that in politics. Now, we even see it with the world around us in everyday life. You can't blame a group. Blaming groups doesn't work. You want to blame individuals. And what they're really talking about, and if they don't have the balls to say it because it's really true, what they want to say is the ownership of Marvel and DC, because that's really who they're talking about. But they won't say that because they'll get in trouble for that, but somehow won't get in trouble for calling out a race and a gender. I don't understand it. I don't pretend to understand it, but I do think it's the wrong approach, and I'll leave it at that. You were going to say something, Joey? Joey?
To what every.
Meredith, are you hearing him?
No, he's frozen on my screen.
Well, Joey, if you can hear me, we'll come right back to you. Meredith, any follow-up to that? Well, we're just waiting.
No, not really. I totally agree with you where I think for the panel, as the panelist, I think it's important to reach a broader audience and try to bring them in, because otherwise, what the heck are you there for? You know?
Yeah, and again, you can. I don't think he can hear us at all. I think you can understand that we have all had a different journey, but I don't think you can start pointing a finger. That's a very broad stroke pen, and you're putting me in that because I happen to survive and have reached middle age, not by no choice other than survival.
Right.
Like, and when I was born, I didn't get that. There were color assignments. No one gave me the color assignment game.
Yeah, you didn't have a choice.
To be held accountable for those things, and I do know people are like, you have to understand everyone has a different situation, and people might feel that way. It's still a dangerous position to feel. We should all look at each other on the merits of who we are and not diminish a person into a gender or a color. That's just how I feel. It was how I was raised. I know everyone will feel differently about it, but to me, it was always them not being inclusive. The panels start off saying we want to be inclusive, and then say that. It's like, it's like me saying, I want to date, I want to date everyone. I'm pansexual, but I'm only dating one gender. I'm not being genuine with what I'm saying. I am probably at that point, whatever gender I'm choosing, whether it's my own or the opposite. But you can't say you're something if you're not going to live up to saying what you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think.
I think in a way that kind of speaks to your own experience of being omitted from certain cons because of your content.
Oh, the fetish. Well, that's a whole different. That's a whole different.
I mean, just the attitude of you're going to judge based on a cover or a title, but you didn't look at the content, and I think when panelists go up there and they do that, I think that sets a dangerous precedent as well. It's not fair.
I agree with there's a difference between, and I just want to say it from the person. I've definitely dealt with that where I feel like I'm attacked for my content without anyone knowing what's actually in the book. Joey's back with us.
Yay!
But the part about being a middle-aged white man, I can't change that. I can promote a different book. I can promote my Cat, Dad, and Supermom and go to a show. I can't stop being a white middle-aged guy. I mean, most people don't think I'm actually middle-aged, so I think I get away with it sometimes because I think middle-aged to them is white hair for some reason, because it's always someone very young saying middle-aged. And when you're younger, middle-aged is like 35 to 45. And when you get to 35 and 45, you're like, well, we live to 80. Isn't it like 50 that's middle-aged?
Yeah, I tell people I'm halfway to dead, so.
So, I mean, I just I like things to be supportive, and I don't like that. I don't like that door being closed on anyone even when it comes to Comicsgate, when people are like, oh, that person's Comicsgate, I'm like, I don't care. I care what they're saying. I judge a person on what they do, not what they wear. You know what I mean? It's not what a person wears, it's what they do as a human being that I have my impressions of them built on. Joey, you're back with us. So what were you saying?
Oh, but you're right. You go with what you know, and it would be so in the respects and pretend that you know about individuals because of their plight or what. You have to be genuine. You have to be authentic in order to commit, not convince. What your situations have been, and that's pretty much been the case, at least when I've been at panels, to say that if there's something I don't know about, I know about it. If there's something I do know about it, I'm going to rein myself in from sounding like a know-it-all. But I've also been of the opinion, and again, that authenticity is what counts, especially if someone is interested in wanting to speak with you afterwards and talk about your talent, talk about your work.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you are pretending, no actor can act 24/7. Okay. So if you are on a panel, you have to be authentic because people will call you out on your bullshit. And, and you can't have that facade the whole time. So I never understood that unless you're actually playing a role. When you're up at a panel, this is your opportunity to be authentic and find those connections and connect with your audience and say, hey, this, I am more than that. And I am this as well. And I think that's really important too. Yeah. Rob, you're on mute again.
Yeah, Jax is crazy today. Yeah, he ripped apart toilet paper and stuff. He's had one of those days. He just ran in and started yelling. I was able to mute it before it began because I saw the look on his face. But one of the things I want to talk about the importance of panels. Do panels influence you going to a show as just a fan, or setting up a table as creators? Do you guys look at, well, do they have a diverse set of panels? Are they actually talking about topics I want? Do you look at that as something that is a draw for a show?
Meredith, go ahead.
Okay. I don't go to cons for the panels. I mean, I do look at who the special guests are and if it's really cool and stuff like that. But that's not my main draw. I go for the experience itself. Having said that, when I'm there, I actually try to get into as many panels as possible, because it is that opportunity to sit down and really listen to what they have to say, see if there's anything else that they can bring to the table. Maybe they give a little Easter egg of what's to come. So those are really interesting things and fun things for me to do, as well as an opportunity to get off my feet and get into a quieter space rather than the open floor of a Comic-Con, because you know, it's so busy and it's so loud and there's so much stuff going on that if you don't have those quiet moments, I think you can really get yourself up into a lather, you know.
Yeah, I agree in those respects.
But,
You got to give yourself
but having said that,
a little bit.
yeah, I was going to say, having said that, I do appreciate the panels, but I don't go to the cons because of them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I go to the cons to remind myself why I don't go to cons. Nothing bad or anything. It's just that as you go, you could go to a convention where 500 people show up for the entire weekend, and the staff is going, we bested our record again. And then I could walk into places where there's 5,000 people, and I feel horribly claustrophobic. The thing is, it's equality as well. 5,000 people going into a con, it might not be the best convention ever, and those 500 attended. I will talk about it 20 years on. It was like the best con I've been to at that time. I've always been of the opinion that specifically for panels, I'm going there just to people watch, just to see what other folks are doing, just to see what happens spontaneously. Back in the day, I went to this event in Los Angeles in mid-February called Gallifrey One. Essentially kept the home fires burning for Doctor Who in the States during the 90s and 2000s. Long before there was almost a convention every Saturday, every weekend, just like there was back in the 80s. And you had more time to spend with not just the actors who were part of the tech team, but also the writers who were writing the new adventures and the missing adventures, which is in the early 2000s, but also those individuals you would see now their names as credited as the writers for episodes of the series, or Stephen Moffat in the middle of the lobby with a bunch of guys who wanted to find out about the tricks of the trade where writing was concerned in the UK, and so those things are spontaneous. But yes, panels are always necessary, but I know you have to mix it up at least in order to have a proper convention experience.
Absolutely. And there's something amazing about seeing people in a room react to something. And even sometimes I happen to be very sarcastic by nature, so I'll say jokes, and because I'm not doing stand-up, as I say them, I'll forget to wait for someone to actually laugh, because I don't take that laugh pause, and people in the audience start to get the joke, and I'm already moving on. I have to sometimes slow down. And someone I've been on panels with before is Luke Stone. Luke Stone, how am I at panels? Be honest.
You're pretty good at panels. Not just these online ones, but also these the actual convention panels. You're pretty good at. You're very knowledgeable. You like to give information, and every once in a while, you'll drop an F-bomb, and it'll surprise everyone in the room.
I talk about fetish all the time. I don't know what you're talking about.
Not that F-bomb.
You mean farts? Look, I get gas before a show. It's the nerves. I mean,
it was so funny. It was within the context of something. And so, Rob said something and I watched the face of this lady, right? This gal right in front of us who had been asking tons of questions about writing and making a comic. And as soon as it came out, the look on her face was like slow mo. She was like, she stood there. Nobody else even noticed it, but this poor gal, she noticed it, and she seemed to get over it fairly quickly for how she reacted initially. But it was pretty.
Can't take me anywhere.
I know, right?
There's no taking me anywhere. Luke, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences with panels and why they're important to you?
Yeah, well, I've actually attended more panels than I've gone to. And I think, I think I've seen some things where you were asking about panels and people said, well, I go to them when I'm invited and when I'm scheduled. And, I guess that's not a bad thing, but I'm in that school where I think that we all have something to learn and that if you stop learning, then you start getting dumber.
Yep.
So I'm always going to those. So I will attend anything that has some interest to me. There was one panel that I attended once that it was about the mechanics of creating like this role-playing type game. And I thought, man, this would be really fun to learn this. It is not for me. I learned real quick that was not a venture that I'm ready to take on. But I've learned a lot about photography from panels, not just at like comic conventions, but other places. And then as far as comics goes, I learned a lot early on going to panels, listening to especially the roundtable discussions where comics industry people will talk about their experience. And so I've learned a lot about printing. I've learned a lot about all of these things. So a lot of the information that I have gleaned over the years has either come from panels or come from like YouTube videos or things where someone is sharing in kind of the panel format, the information that's out there. And so I will go to anything that number one interests me or gives me information. I've gone to cosplay panels where they talk about how they make their Halo costumes because that interests me. I don't plan on doing it, but it was really neat to see how they did it, to learn the mechanics of what they're doing and why they're so passionate about it. Now, as far as doing panels, I like to do stuff about comic stuff I know, and as long as I can help teach someone, and I know that I don't know a lot in comparison to some people that have been in the industry longer than I have, but I know how to take a book from an idea to a physical book that you can hold that looks good. And so I try, so I know that I can find someone that is maybe wanting to get up into that area. And that's who I really like to do panels for, is people that are really wanting to have that information. I like to help promote other people. I'm not really trying to stroke my own ego when I do those things. I really honestly just want to help people get better at what they're doing and maybe put some mechanics into realizing their own dreams.
Sorry, I just wanted to interject really quickly, but there was something that you said that I think is key, is that sometimes these panels, you go to them and you're so excited and you're like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I want to learn about. I really want to deep dive into it. And then you go to a panel and you realize, oh, hell no, that's not for me. And I think that's important also. I think it's a really great benefit for panels as well.
I want to touch base on what. I want to touch on what Luke had said. Go ahead, Bob. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. No, I'll talk when you're done because I know you're having a hearing.
No worries. I want to kind of expand on what Luke had mentioned about presenting people's work. I've been in broadcasting for 36 years, and for the last 26 years, I've been doing radio talk programs, or whether it was local or nationally syndicated or just podcasts to promoting people and what they're doing and their work, whether it's an actor who's a character on a TV show on back in the day UPN or the WB or the CW now. The part might be like a supporting role. It's important for them, and I treat that with grace. Also interview story, but the fact of the matter is, everybody is important, and in order to get the word out on that individual, that's presented a conduit for people to reach out to the masses, as it were. Maybe they might get them inspired to do something, or probably interested in that person's work. And correct.
I think Joey's done.
Over to you.
I'm not sure. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, Joey's done. So it's funny what Luke was saying. I wrote a book about BDSM, which deals with the safety and the aspects of beginning it. I have been to, not even lying, probably 20 panels on BDSM safety, BDSM 101. Individually, those are 2 different panels that are done at local gatherings and meetups. And I could tell you that despite it being something that's very basic information, people take very different approaches on it, and the way that they even teach and the information they give. And there's some things that they don't even know about and don't understand the importance of it. And sometimes the hardest thing about me being in a panel is knowing the answer and not being able to say it. And a lot of times I'll ask questions to guide them into the right answers without trying to take over their panels. But there's sometimes some bad information that you can get off of panels, and there's some great information. And sometimes just that different perspective, because I'll ask people why they don't do certain things. And it's funny because sometimes people just don't know it yet. Like Luke said, they just haven't learned it yet. They haven't been to that moment where they've seen why we do the things the way we do them, or why the rules of comic book creating are the way they are. Because a lot of times, and I fear this to be true, creators of comic books come in and they just start creating without knowing the methodology behind it. And we're being joined by someone else, so I'll introduce them in just a second when I think they're here. Varian, are you here with us?
I am.
All right. We're having some communication problems today, so I was just making sure. We're talking about the importance of panels, and I was just saying how I go to some panels and I know the answers, but I still go just to continue to my education and to hear about new trends that are possibly happening and possible changes to the environment that I might not be aware of. And even Joey had kind of touched on it when he said he went to the LGBTI, you said? LGBTQI, I believe,
yes.
Panel where Doctor Who, and he got to hear from a different perspective. How important are panels to you, Varian?
Extremely important. Like you said, if a panel, I've gone to panels of things that I consider myself already versed in, or and because you're going to learn something new, or a new way to do something, some way that you never, figured you could do it, a new insight. I've gone to panels and I've gotten some very good information. I went to a marketing panel at Wizard World before I stepped on the other side of the table. And I got some business advice from a guy whose name I cannot remember, but the advice he gave me is going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And might be bad advice when I think about it now, but it was still, they are very important. I think that if you're looking to get into comics, panels are like an important part of the con going experience.
Now, I had asked this earlier, and I do want your opinion from it. Do you ever look as a person who would be considered a well-used merchant at a show? Because I don't know what they call, like, we're Artist Alley, but I don't know, aren't we considered still merchants at that point? So as a merchant, do you look at the panel list and try to decide if that's a show you want to do? Is that even on your radar when you're picking what shows to do?
I mean, I'll look through a program list. Sometimes I try to do it beforehand, if I can. And there's a panel I want to go to. I kind of, I look at my wife and give her puppy dog eyes. like, 'cause she knows she's gonna be at the booth for a couple of hours while I'm, in there. I did do that recently at the one of our shows. We had Jim Lee, and I'm like, I gotta go meet Jim. I'm sorry. And she's like, okay. And I got there in the morning. They said, yeah, we're gonna go line up for Jim Lee right now. It's 10:30. And I was like, okay, I'll be with you, and I'll see you in an hour, sweetheart. Yeah, it was 10:30. By the time I got back to my table, it was 3 o'clock. So, yeah.
Did she give you the eyes?
She did. She was a little. She was like, "Where have you been?" And I'm like, "I've been with Jim. I've been with talking. Look, I got pictures. I got
See, I'm the one that usually disappears.
Yeah.
My poor husband, he's the one who does all the work.
Yeah, it's like I got my book signed though. Look, and yeah, I think that I do that. I look through panels and see who's gonna be there. Also, I look through panels to see which one of my friends are doing panels, because I know sometimes having you out in the crowd, if possible, means a lot. It's a type of support. You know,
It certainly isn't fun to do a panel with no one in the room.
right?
Of course, the last panel that Rob and I did, we went to, we were waiting in the room for our turn to host this next panel, and the presenter for the one before us never showed up. So there was this room of people that wanted to know how to photograph cosplayers. And so I'm a photographer. And so I was like, well, I can give you like the 15-minute crash course on how to, focus on lighting, because that's the first thing you learn in, any kind of photography, lighting.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? That's a good question. And for those on the panel right now who have done panels, have you guys ever done a panel to an empty room? I have. And I can tell you, doing the panel actually attracted people. Because what I would do is set up a phone to record the audio, or put up a camera so they could record it and do it like we're doing right now. And I could put it up on YouTube, and all of a sudden people show up. But I've done it to an empty, like I was at a really bad show that disappeared. It was Florida PopCon. And oh my God, it was a train wreck. Honestly, I think there are more people in this panel today than showed up for the entire 3-day show. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, 3 days of torture. I relettered an entire comic book that weekend. Wow. So we had a panel there, and we had 2 people, and that was a lot. I think that was the best attended panel the entire weekend. But I'm a professional, and when I show up there, if I commit myself, and I say this at the beginning of every panel, and I think Luke's heard me say this, you have me for an hour. I could talk about everything I create for an hour and try to sell you, or you can ask me questions. I don't care either which one it is. I'm happy to talk about what I create. But if you want to talk about something different, it's your job as the audience to ask me questions. So that's the question. Have you guys done a panel to an empty room, or a very poorly attended panel?
I gotta say, the panel I did, my first panel I ever did was in space in Columbus, Ohio. And I was hoping the room was gonna be empty, and it was not. And I was, I don't know if they thought I was someone else, or the room was gonna be empty. But people were there, and I was a little shocked. I think it was like, it was a small room, granted. It could probably hold like 60, 70 people. And we had about 35 there in the room. And the video is on YouTube. And that was 32 too many for me. I wanted it to be a nice small crowd, but no, it was a lot of people in there. And but you just turn it on. It's like flipping that switch we do here.
Yeah,
now, I would imagine it'd be a lot easier for like Luke, because he gets to preach to a crowd full of people every week.
A lot of people say that I am an introvert that fools people into thinking I'm an extrovert, to be honest with you. And so yeah, I am good at being able to present to a room and communicate, because I have to be.
I think for me, there was a lot of manager material, and I've done stand-up. I think stand-up was the worst thing I ever did for being an introvert. I was horrible at it. And anyone else do stand-up on the panel today? Has anyone else done stand-up comedy?
I haven't done stand-up comedy, but I have been a solo singer.
Yeah. Okay, so when you do stand-up, you are having this light that is a freaking spotlight in your eyes, And even when you're doing a panel, you can see people's faces. So now you're trying to tell jokes. And the one thing about telling jokes is you want to see people's reactions. So a couple times I did stand up, I had that light. I could not see anyone's reaction. So I could not tell if my jokes were landing. And a lot of doing panels, you can read the room and decide, hey, they're taking me serious. Hey, they're bored. Hey, this is interesting them. I was on a panel, and I won't say which because I'm going to be nice. I was invited on it, and they were droning on, and the entire room was going to sleep. Wasn't my panel, so I didn't say a word. I'm a professional. But I sat there on my phone because even I was bored. And they were going on trying to sell their product, and the room was just tone deaf to it because everyone was getting bored. As a matter of fact, people started leaving. It was getting so bad. And again, they didn't realize that they were killing their own panel. So the minute I get on, I just start talking, and you see the whole room perk up and suddenly come alive. And then people start asking questions while I'm there. I feel bad because it's not my panel, but it's the first time they're interacting. And the minute I passed it back to the people, the room died and everyone started to clear out again.
So that's what happened that one time.
Wasn't you, Luke? No, this is, and I felt bad because sometimes the people presenting are tone deaf to the idea that they're not there to just sell. And I've seen that a lot with panels. People show up, and the only thing they're there for is an infomercial. Yeah. And that's not what panels are for.
No,
and
I think
people off from talking about their products too much.
Yeah. I was going to say, what I think as a panel goer and a panel presenter, having been on both sides, I much prefer the question and answer process. I think it's a good way for you to get to know them and for them to get to know you. And then you cut through all of that baloney. I mean, if I don't need to talk about, how I found a printer, then I don't talk about that. I talk about whatever they need to know, because we only have, in many cases, an hour with them. So let's make the absolute most of that hour that we can. So let's talk a little bit about what our panel is for, where we might have some expertise for them, and then allow them to interact with us. And I much prefer it that way. And also being on the other end, I much prefer being in a panel where I can ask questions. And even if I don't ask a question, if I can hear other people ask those questions, I might learn things from their questions that maybe I didn't know.
Varian, did you want to say something, or did you just flicker for no reason?
I flickered, but I did have a question. So I think I was for Joey. Now, Joey, correct me if I'm wrong, he runs the Geek Radio, right?
America.
Okay. Have you found with that people want to hear panel like material on your network?
Well, most of what I do is one-on-ones. When I Overdrive, I was co-hosting and producing it with a friend of mine, and once in a while he'd go to the conventions and he'd get obviously permission to record the panels, and then he'd have it broadcast in a sort of reduced way. I never myself, because I just felt that there was just some sort of implications in that. I wanted people to go to the cons, and I've never done it in that manner. I've never recorded panels. I'd say the only panel where was something from 1985 with Colin Begg, named the Sixth Doctor, and John Nathan Turner, the producer of Doctor Who, just for the sake of, and this is audio off. I played that for the sake of letting the folks know this is what it was like back in the day, where there were criticisms in the fan. But elsewise, it's pretty much been one-on-one interviews with me. Yeah.
And, Rob, I want to ask a question to the entire panel about panels. Is that an opportunity? How do you guys feel about fans using that as an opportunity to voice their grievances with your work? Yeah, that pregnant pause, because everybody's muted.
What do you mean, Varian?
Like, you got that smart ass fan that stands up in the back of the room, and they're like, "Excuse me, I don't like in issue number 57, you kind of phoned it in with your whatever it is, and they get mad or they don't like this." Is that a fan's opportunity to take a swing at you, or do you expect fans to take it easy and just come to the panel ask, those, what is it called? They're basically softball questions.
Does anyone else want to take this? 'Cause I can take this, but I want to hear what you guys have to say too.
I'm just going to pop in here. If you are sitting at that table at the front of the room, then you're making yourself vulnerable to those questions, and I think that you should come back honestly, but without snark, unless that's your gig. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't see Rob really taking too much crap from anybody without coming back to him. And I just kind of met him. You know what I mean? But you're up there, you're vulnerable, and you're gonna take it with a grain of salt. Now, if you have a huge ego and you don't take it well, your other fans are going to see how you react, and they're going to judge you by your reaction, I think. So I think it's important that, to let them be the jerk, and you keep it professional.
I mean, there's going to be
I'm reminded of exactly. I'm reminded of what Evan Dorkin with them going to Comic-Con, and there's this one panel of them just sitting behind the table, smoking cigars, drinking, and basically just telling off the fans, which is something I think that maybe Evan Dorkin, wanted to do at least, but by carrying been to a convention where there's basically been an exchange of the initials FU. Yeah.
Well, as Varian has mentioned, I've had an opportunity to really deal with a lot of people that can come across in a difficult way. And in my regular life, not my comic life, I always have to choose my responses pretty wisely. If I don't, it not only has an impact on me or my particular vocation, but it can also have an impact on the people that I work with and those that are connected to me. I represent more than myself many times, and so I think that a classy answer is always going to be the best answer. I mean, there's going to be people that are going to come out and ask things, but if people are trying to be abusive or trying to get you in a corner, it's always best to just kind of politely shut that down and say, I really appreciate that. I'll try to answer your question as best I can, But if it's a religious question, because there's a lot of people that are here that are taking their time to be here that have real questions, and they're not a part of your vendetta or your issue. And so I'll try to answer your question as best I can, but let's move on from that and be respectful of everybody's time, because this just isn't your show, And so I think you have to be careful and just be respectful of that. I don't have like an assumed writing name or anything like that. It's just me. If you look up Luke Stone, it's Luke Stone. If you look, I am who I am. My cell phone, I probably shouldn't say this live, but my cell phone number is published to people in the world, so they can find me and get a hold of me. I'm not, I don't try to hide any aspect of who I am from people. And so I've had to deal with some.
But Luke Stone is a heck of a name for a comic book character,
It really is. Funny story. Let me tell you this. This takes 2 seconds. I once was at a convention in Nashville, Tennessee. We stayed at the Opryland Hotel. It was over Thanksgiving weekend. And I stopped at one of the restaurants and I ate there. And when I paid for my meal, I talked to the waiter and I told him what my name was. We were chatting back and forth, being friendly. And he's like, Luke Stone, man, that's a great name. That'd be a great movie name or whatever. Well, it turns out I found out years later that my name was used as I was a extra in a movie, and I had went and I found, okay, well, what movie was I an extra in? And it turned out it was this actor who had been, he turned out to be an actor, and so he had used my name when he got a role as an extra, and I'm like, just use your own name, man. It's not a big deal, but
Barry, did you want me to answer that? Because you go off on deep tears.
No. Go ahead.
I think you'll like this thing before you bring up your comment.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a couple funny stories to you. Well, the funniest one by all means has to be the time I went to Virginia, and I'm in I forgot the name of the show, but I'm in a show, and I have a diversity panel. The problem is that the community out there is a little smaller, so I don't have anyone lined up to be on there. So I show up to this room, and the guy doing the diversity and sexual diversity, our panel is about the importance of diversity and sexual representation in comics. So I walk in, and it's this middle-aged white guy. And these are the same panels where everyone complains about the middle-aged white guy. So the minute I'm walking in, everyone's got daggers. And I have my kid with me, Jax, and he's 4, and he's hyper as hell. And he's running around the room. So then everyone is just looking at me like, who is this? And I'm telling you, the minute I walked in that room, Varian, they were out to get me. Mm-hmm. They had nothing but questions lined up to fuck with me. There's your F word, Luke. They are trying to actively fuck with me and ask me these pitfall questions. Like, because I was like, listen, I'm here because diversity is important to me, but also I'm part of sexual representation because I create a book about fetish. So they were asking question after question, like, well, why don't you? And I explained, like, I don't like how people use LGBTQ to slap it on the side of a book and claim it's an LGBTQ book when it's really not. It has a character who might be bisexual. I was like, I could do that with my Barbara Unleashed because she's bisexual, but I felt it would be disingenuous because it's not about that. It's about the fetish community. So I got told, well, why don't you put it on the book? And I could feel it was a setup. I was like, let's be honest, everybody. I am a middle-aged white guy. If I put that on my book, what's everyone going to say? And everyone started laughing. And that was the minute I won the crowd over. But before that, there were a lot of moments. And to Varian's question, and he'll like this one a lot. So I always ask people if they want to be a reporter or if they want to be a priest. And in Luke's case, he would ruin it for me. But usually no one wants to be a priest. No one wants to be a CNN correspondent. So everyone says no. So I say, don't talk about religion. Don't talk about politics. So this girl raises her hand and she goes, I want to work for CNN. And I was like, okay, so this advice is for everyone but you. So then she makes it her way to try to be mocking during the panel. So she asks this question, well, what do you think you could write about a woman? I was like, yeah, I also think I can write about murder without being a murderer. So I think there's things that we could do, and you should have seen the look on her face, and everyone laughed at her. So yes, Meredith's right. You don't be a heckler at one of my shows. You're going to pay for it, and I'm going to patiently wait. Varian would be hard to deal with, though. If Varian came to my, I'd be.
I had a fellow publisher try to throw me under the bus at a diversity panel. He'll never try that shit again. He had he is LGBTQ. He's a member of that community, and he had on his table, he had put out on his table that his table is an LGBTQ safe space, and he had offered me a placard, and I told him no. So when we did this diversity panel up at a local convention, and that room actually had a nice amount of people in it as well, maybe about at least for the room could probably hold about 30. 16, 17 people, and these are locals. And he says, the convention's like 2.5 hours from my house. And he says, well, I offered you a placard, and you wouldn't take it. And what does that say about, your allyship? And I'll never forget those words. And I had to not get mad. I had to maintain myself. But I told him, I said, I feel like you having that placard on your table, it's sad because as far as I'm concerned, this whole convention should be an LGBTQ safe space, and let me find out it's not. You point me in the direction of the person that is making you feel unwelcomed, and you'll see real allyship. You're not gonna see me just put a placard on my table and, oh, it's cool, come buy from me. I'm not after your dollar. I don't, it's safe to shop here. And I see that. No, and we're talking about the panels too, Rob. I've seen now, in order to not try to curb hecklers, I've seen some companies actually try to get their own moderators, like their hand-picked moderators. Oh, no. There's no way Joy Reynolds is doing moderating my panel. Absolutely not. He's going to ask real questions, and he's going to pick people and throw me grenades. I got Meredith in my back pocket. I don't have Meredith in my back pocket. But Meredith is going to make sure that I don't get any of these questions from an angry Rob.
Wait a minute. Are we talking about a Dirk Manning panel?
No. See, oh my god. No, but I mean, I've heard of people doing that, and it just shows you how protective people are of their protective they are of their own, like, of their reputation and their image in this industry.
Well, yeah, here's my problem. I actually prefer the tough questions because I feel like the tough questions, the hardball kind of stuff, it can really show your character, and it can show your love for people, and it can show your love for the industry in the way you answer those things. And so I kind of like those. And I mean, heck, I get them. I get them not for comics, but for other things.
See, I'm inviting Luke to my next fetish panel and not telling him it's a fetish panel. And be like, you like hard questions.
I would do my best. I was like, I know nothing about this subject matter.
The whole panel would be like, Luke would just be like, what would Jesus do?
He wouldn't do what Rob's doing, that's for dang sure.
I don't know. I mean, don't judge Jesus. He hang out with some hoes. I'm just saying, it's true.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's important I think it's good that you get hardball questions. I think that's really good because everybody gets to see, what your character is, how you come back, and that's the connection that they can make with you. But it's never okay to be abused. And I think as panelists, it's okay to be firm without being a jerk also. So, when it comes to panels, maybe having an itinerary and saying, listen, that's off topic, dude, let's move forward, and just shutting it down there and say, hey, listen, if you want to have a conversation after the panel, be my guest. My table's in the other room, blah, 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 meet me at my table or whatever. But it's okay to be firm, but it's never okay to accept the abuse. Be firm and shut it down.
I got a question for you all that I was asked at the panel. And I want everyone to go on screen if they can, Luke, because I want to see the expression. So this was a hard question, an honest, hard question I was asked. So we're doing the diversity panel and someone raises their hand and we call on them. And I had already kicked out somebody. I'd already said to someone, you're not allowed to ask that question. I kicked their question out because, like Meredith said, control the panel. Don't answer questions are clickbait. And they're just asking to cause trouble. So this kid was not, and I stress this, I think this was a genuine thing. They raised their hand. They went, listen, I felt I'm a big fan of Smallville, but I really felt there was a lack of representation in that show. It seemed like a lot of white people. And I'll tell you how I answered it, because I did not shy away from answering this question. But if you were asked that at a panel, Meredith, how would you have answered that?
Come back to me. I have to think about that.
All right, Luke, you're up. You're on the hot.
I got it. Yeah. Have you been to rural America? I grew up in Indiana, and which is a lot like Smallville in a way. We had cornfields as far as the eye could see. There is something that there is more than corn in Indiana. It's called marijuana. The nation's largest marijuana crop is there. And I'll tell you, it's so good. Tom Petty sang about it. But if you look in those communities, there's not a lot of diversity. So I moved from Kokomo, Indiana to Jacksonville, Florida, and there's tons of diversity here. I don't want to go back to where there's not that. But if I'm writing a story about Farmville, you've got to represent it the way it is. It's going to be. Smallville was a white place, it was just real white.
All right, Varian, how would you have answered that at a diversity panel?
I would, again, I had a girlfriend who lived in Kansas, and I drove down to see her. Most boring trip ever. I flew every time after that, and she was in a little small city in Kansas. Really a rest stop, honestly. And it's a place you got off to go get gas and maybe stay in a hotel. Little small town, nice place, but really, really white, and we had to drive damn near to Iowa before I seen another black person. So yeah, I mean, it was like I never understood when they made Pete black. I'm like, yeah, right. That wouldn't happen. And no one says anything to Pete. No one. Pete never faced any type of you know, inequality or anything. He's just like, I mean, beginning, but then again, I would have been Superman's friend if I'd have been Pete, because like, hey, you call me what you want. You know, my buddy is.
Yeah, but that does raise a question. A lot of times we will show these. That's the unrealistic aspect of some of these things, is when you see that there's one particular cultural group outweighing the other, but we don't show the inequality that's there, because it exists in every one of them. If you go to a primarily Hispanic community and you've got the one white guy there, the one white guy is going to catch flack for being there, whether they like him or not. It's one of those things. It's not necessarily always negative, but there is some attention that draws to that thing. And you're absolutely right, Varen. Pete's not getting he's not getting pulled over a little extra.
yeah. He's not. You're right. And he's not captain on the football team in the back. Oh, was he? He may have been captain of the football team. He may have been. That would have been.
He better have been.
I will say this though. I've seen some TV series recently where they have made they've taken characters from different ethnicities and mixed them into time periods that they should not have been in, or at least accepted as they were. Like, I've seen shows where it's 1950, and you'll see this black woman walk into the store and, start shopping right amongst, everyone else. And I'm like,
it didn't happen like that.
That ain't quite accurate.
That ain't accurate.
That's the kids today not knowing history. To be honest, it's just the damn truth. That's like 100 years ago to them, so none of it matters. Yeah. Like, if it didn't happen on the internet, it didn't exist.
Yeah. So we watched the live action Lady and the Tramp actually the other day on Disney Plus.
So did I. Oh, wait, mine wasn't on Disney Plus. Never mind. Continue.
Oh, yeah. My God.
So I watched. Oh my gosh. I just roll my eyes. That's my default expression, is just, oh gosh. But I watched that, and there's a lot of that. I'm like, that's not culturally accurate. And I mean, I see what they're trying to do there, but it's giving people a misrepresentation of what it was like. These people would have not been treated like the first class citizens they are here, I almost, and I mean, I don't know, maybe if I'm wrong here, but I almost kind of got a little mad for all of my black friends. Because I'm like, finally we are starting to get to a point to where we are really, as a society, trying to shun racism. It still exists. We still see it. We still see some prejudice. And I mean, everybody's going to have a little bit of prejudice in them, and it's not all necessarily negative, but because we tend to lean towards the communities we feel most comfortable with and most connected with. But to take something that, happened in like 1940 and just completely change the whole aspect of things. And I'm like this story couldn't have happened the way that it happened, the way they're telling it. I get that they are doing diversity and inclusion and things like that, but it just seems overwhelming and kind of ignoring history. And I don't know, Varian, you can tell me if I'm wrong by feeling that way.
Before we go down that rabbit hole, I do want to get to Meredith and Joey about the actual questions. I do want to ask everyone what they would have done. So, Meredith or Joey, what would you have done if you were asked why wasn't Smallville represented more in diversity? And if you don't feel comfortable answering it, remember you don't have to. And I tell everyone they don't have to.
No, I'll answer it. My apologies, Meredith. And by the way, I'm going to be heading out after this answer. I believe that in order to tell the story, you have to be as authentic as possible, and not be anachronistic. The idea of saying that back in the day we all got along with each other, maybe a few folks got along with each other, but there was still the separate but equal, or as I like to call it, equal but separate. Because of the fact that there were a certain group of individuals who were happy to coexist with another group of individuals with the proviso that they don't cross the neighborhood. And regrettably, there are still some individuals today who are very much like that. And I think as long as humanity exists, regrettably, we're still going to have that sense of that sense of out and out racism, prejudice. And as far as I'm concerned, telling the story is one thing, but having inclusion is another. And you have to, I wouldn't say you have to draw the line somewhere, but you have to state that we all didn't get along in comparison to 50, 60, 70 years ago. So we have to present that to remind ourselves that we must continue to get along. And my mother, who was born in the deep South, was born into poverty, which knew no race, no creed, no color. And she loved everybody, regardless of what color their skin was, regardless of what background they were. She always gave people the same treatment, the same compassion, the same respect. And I hope she put it in me as well. Of course, I was born 1967. So it was, I was about 19, I was in first grade when my mother had started to tell me to respect people not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And obviously the assassination of Dr. King had still, was still fresh in people's minds. And in those respects, I would say be authentic, but also realize that there was then, and for us to deny that difficult time is not doing us a great service either. So I hope I've spoken proper on that.
I think you did, except for Smallville, if I'm not mistaken, took place in current day, or at least what was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But I know, Joey, you got to go. Thank you for being on the program.
Thank you so much.
Pass it off.
Thank you, Joey.
Thanks, Joey. See you around.
Go ahead, Meredith. What do you think now?
Well, I've never been asked that question, so it just kind of threw me for a loop. As a fiction writer, if I'm writing something that's kind of based in history, I try to stay true to what was happening, because I think that's our responsibility, even though it's fiction, to have that bit of truth in there. And I don't want to be the one that's rewriting history unless it's like a time travel, fantasy, science fiction type of thing, but then that's kind of the disclaimer. You're already putting that forward, that this is what you're writing, and you're rewriting your ideal history or whatever goes with your book or your story, or whatever it is. So when it comes to Smallville, it's like I know that they're trying to shove diversity down our throats, but I didn't grow up seeing that. So I honestly, and I might get hate mail for this, I don't appreciate that being shoved down my throat. I don't appreciate every damn show having a gay couple kissing. I'm personally not a big fan of, PDA anyway, because I think it's, for everybody to kind of be, yeah.
Finally,
Varian's off the hook.
I'm just saying that it's I don't like that being shoved down my throat, because what happens is you have one group. All right, so Smallville it's white. All right, it's a small town. White people live there. What do you want? Do you want the token black person in there? I don't get it. And it's the same thing. Now you're seeing all of these shows, where they're predominantly black actors, and they're great shows. I'm like, you want to throw a token white person in there just to be diverse? Does that move your story along? Let's get real. All right.
As a person who was the only white person in a black neighborhood, I was perfectly fine being the token white. I knew that my very presence would help some of my friends get out of traffic tickets. I knew it would.
Somebody's got to talk to the cops.
Yeah, and I was like, "Hey guys, I got this." And it always worked. And but I think that kind of forced diversity. Here's a statement. I didn't make it. Somebody else smarter than me did, and I just can't remember their name. But they said those that ignore history are doomed to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And I'm afraid that if we ignore what we've gone through, then we'll wind up finding ourselves going backwards. And that's not what we want. We want to move forward, and we want inclusion. We want representation. I believe everybody should be represented equally in the media that they like. And my wife and I are joking because right now there's this new trope for every new show. There's the gay sibling. And I'm like, is that helping? Is that helping gay people? Is the token black guy or the token white guy? Is that helping those cultural issues that we have, or is it causing more? Or is it causing more trouble? I just don't know. And
here's the thing: we all come from different cultures. Okay, I'm half Korean. I don't fit in with the whites, and I don't fit in with the Koreans. Okay, I'm rejected by both. In fact, my name Meredith. My mother is 100% Korean. There are two sounds in the Korean language that do not exist in their language. That's the R and the TH. I'm like, Mom, what the hell were you thinking? What was I, the child that shall not be named? So so when I see this stuff about diversity, and I'm like, you take a person for what they are. We all come from these experiences and things like that. I have a Korean culture that I grew up with, and I saw all of these things. So we should embrace those differences because that's what makes our life colorful, but not to the point where we're pandering because we need to be inclusive and all the pretty utopia bullshit.
I do want. I know, Rob, you had a question.
No, I still haven't answered the original thing of what really happened. We've gone down a very different path than we wanted to.
Well, I was gonna say with the inclusion. Again, because Luke asked me how do I feel about it. I'm happy to see black actors get roles in current things. When they try to whitewash or try to I guess whitewash is the wrong word, but when they try to act like something didn't happen, or when they try to rewrite history, that's when I get upset. And I also want to say that sometimes when you try to be inclusive, you can create bigger problems because you don't have a understanding of that ethnicity you're trying to put in there. It wasn't quite the same, but that movie Gran Torino, my wife's friend, she's Hmong, and he's Irish, but she's Hmong, and I was I had seen that movie, so that was my first and only experience with our exposure to that life, to that culture. And so for the longest, I treated his kids very differently. Like I didn't pick them up, I didn't pat them on the head because the movie told me patting them on the head is horrible. Like if you say, "Hey, how's it going?" They get offended. He says, "Dude, none of that shit's true." and so I was like, oh, and I felt like an idiot. Now there you go, Rob. You can have your show back.
Now that we can get back to talking about panels, and the topic of the show was not the diversity panel. I'm going to say this, and we're going to say goodbye because we're actually out of time, and I do have to take my sister to work. So the answer to it, what I did is, it was funny because I was the only white person on that panel that day. So everyone stopped and looked at me that was even on the panel, and everyone in the room looked at me, and I looked to my sides, and I said, I guess you guys want me to take this? And everyone laughed. And I said to the kid, and I said, well, why don't we do this? Does anyone have a phone in here that can Google the actual demographics of Kansas? And as soon as they get it, we'll address you. I'll take another question, and we'll come right back to it. So we took another question. Someone raised their hand about the demographics. We talked about the demographics. And it turned out like Kansas is like 95% white. I didn't even expect that as an answer. So instead of answering it, I literally looked at the kid and I said, well, knowing that it's 95% white in Kansas, do you still think the demographic was wrong for the show with diversity? And the kid just went, you know what? No. He's like, I get it now. I guess if they are in Kansas, that would have made sense. He's like, I would have liked to see more characters that were diverse, though, that were superheroes. And I was like, well, that's a different question. And then we actually got to talk about that, how we could bring diverse characters and whether you change the color of a character and what does that mean. So I think sometimes the best way to answer a question is to let them answer it themselves. sometimes I just toss the questions back. Like right now, when I ask Luke Stone to tell us where they can find him.
You can find me at lukestonestudios.com. You can find me on Facebook, Luke Stone Studios. You can also find me on Twitter, Luke Stone Studio. No S on that one. Right now, I've got a Kickstarter running for my first full arc of Hybrids, the Sons of Gods. I encourage you to check that out. There's some, about every week, we're putting up a new tier. We've got some hard time tiers. So if you would like to get involved with that and not have to spend an arm and a leg, we can get you covered on that too. We are 2 backers away from unlocking a special trading card for all physical backers. So be sure to go and check that out. Appreciate it.
And Varian, where can they find you? We're going to go start with the logos first, the talking logos.
Yeah, Varian Grant on Facebook. It's Kid, KYD _V on Twitter. Last Call Comics is my publishing arm. WhenWeRiot.com is my personal website. And, of course, IndieVolt.com, where you can follow us on every social media platform. And you can download IndieVolt Radio on Google and iOS, and you can download IndieVolt TV on Roku.
Meredith, what about you?
Well, everybody, you can find me on geekinsider.com. On my social media, if you look at MEREJ99, Mayor J99, I just Google that and I should pop up on pretty much any social media platform. Give me a follow. We are also organizing Geek Out Virtual Con, which is April 11th and 12th, and Rob is going to be one of our co-hosts. So we're going to get him in there and interview our special guests as well, so we can also promote what he's doing. And yeah, and if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to me. Meredith at geekinsider.com is my email address. And I'm just all over the place. And I'm going to be eyebrows deep in getting Geek Out Virtual Con organized and launched. So, yeah.
And I'm not only going to be helping out Meredith, but I'm going to read some questions on our way out. Or comments too. Brian K. Moore says, I love the Q&A aspects of panels. That's how we get guests off the script and maybe learn something real about them. When I run panels, I can't wait to take the spotlight to the audience. And Ari says, I agree. As an Indian from a multicultural family, forced diversity puts me off of the product. And hopefully I didn't put you off of my products. Remember, all the mean people were below me right now in the room. I was good guy today. I was everyone's friend. Yes, hopefully. Come buy my comics. I don't know. You can find me at MrAnderson.com. I hope you guys enjoy these panels. And we're going to invite Luke and Varian to have an actual conversation about diversity. Maybe we'll do another diversity panel this Friday. Because when Varian was on it, he didn't talk about diversity much. I bring him onto a panel about panels, and then all he wants to do is talk about diversity. So maybe we'll bring these two together, and Luke can tell us all about his experiences and a proper panel in the future. And we'll bring on Meredith just to say she hates everything that's diverse, because that's what Meredith did today. She was like,
all hate mail to me.
Diversity. And I just want to remind everyone, if you did get offended today, you can send all your hate mail to Geek Insider. And if you don't want to send it to Meredith, because Meredith just is cool, and you need someone to send the hate mail to, we always have the backup. Mail to Indie. I appreciate
Varian
it.
can handle it. He's got broad shoulders.
It'll just come back to me. Rob, someone wrote this about you, and it sounds like it's about him. I'm like, wait a minute, Varian, I didn't say that you did. He's like, shut up, Rob, answer the question. Thank you all for being part of the program today. We got to go because I got stuff to do, places to go. Well, not really. I just got to take my sister to work. But it's my one time I get out of the house lately, so I'm going to take it and run. I thank you all for being part of the show. We'll talk to you all soon.